Hey everyone, this is another gardening video. I know I do these pretty much every year, but I just like to keep track of what I'm growing. It's just something that I enjoy doing, so I thought I might as well upload them to YouTube and you guys can see as well. Like I say, it's pretty much the same thing every year that I'm growing. This year I have grown a lot more than normal, so I'll give you a look at what's growing at the minute. See, in the ground here I've got 3 tomatoes growing, and then in the rest of the greenhouse I've got a pot there with cucumber plants in. I've got 2 in there. Next to that I've got a pepper plant, then another tomato, then another pepper, another tomato, and 2 more cucumbers. And I'm hoping that the way I've spaced them out, they won't smother each other too much, because the pepper plants don't get quite so big, so having them in between a cucumber and a tomato will hopefully mean there's room for everything. I managed to get all these pots cheap. The black pots I think I paid about 20p for at a car boot sale. The marble tubs were £1 each because they're supposed to be waste paper bins. I got them out of B&M. And then this one here was actually from an old bin that I had in the kitchen, a pedal bin that I didn't want anymore. It was getting rusty, so I took the plastic bit from inside out and I've used that as a pot as well. Outside there I've got the water butt, and then here I've got my salad leaves growing. Different types of lettuce and rocket, spinach in there. Then I've got my spare beans and peppers and things here as well, just in case some of the main ones die. It's always a good idea to grow lots of spares, and I can always find some extra space outside to put some of these as well. Got spare cucumbers, peppers and tomatoes all there. Here I've got lots of chives growing, because I love putting chives in things. They basically taste like mini spring onions. Really lovely taste to them. And then if we go across to here, I've got my beans growing. I've got 3 in there at the minute. Got 1 more to plant as well. I'm trying to kind of stagger them. You can see 2 of them are taller than that one there. And then I'll put another one in there. So I've got 4 in that pot that will all grow up these poles. And these poles, I can't remember where I got these from. I got them for free from somewhere. And they're kind of hollow inside, so you can put one inside the other to gradually build them up taller. The potatoes are growing like crazy this year. I don't think they've ever grown so big before. I've got 3 buckets full here. You can see how much they're all coming out. They're all just in buckets as well. Just regular black buckets. Compost bin, which is really useful to have, especially this year, because I didn't want to be going out to the shops unnecessarily buying bags of compost. I didn't have to, because I'm producing my own here. But as well as this main compost bin, I have a second one here. Now this was just a regular bin that I had in the kitchen, another one that, no actually I think this was a wash basket that I ended up replacing. It was just a bit too small, but I thought I'd use it as an extra compost bin, so I cut the bottom out of it so that the worms and things could get up from the soil inside there. And then I use this to put extra garden waste in, and then once a year I'll just lift this up out of the ground and get all the soil and compost out of the bottom there. I tend to use this one just for leaves, so it's kind of leaf mould I get out of this one, and then regular compost out of the other bin. From the 2 sets of raspberry bushes that I've got growing, I'm getting almost a full tub a day. Yesterday I did get a full tub, today it's only about half full. That's quite a lot I'm managing to store up in the freezer. So that's what I picked today, along with the 2 tubs that I've already got full that I've been picking over the last couple of weeks. And these are my beans coming along quite nicely. I've got 2 varieties here, one with red flowers and one with white flowers, but the one with the red flowers tend to come earlier. See, the white ones are only just starting to bud there, which means that I'll have a longer period of harvest. I guess the Red ones will come in earlier for maybe a month or two, and then once they're done, the white ones will start to bear fruit. Tomato plants in here are getting really big now, so I've nipped the tops off. Now they're up to the roof. But amongst them I've got 3 tomato plants in the back there, 2 cucumbers, 2 peppers, and then 2 more tomatoes along the side. I've tried to space them out, so there's a cucumber, tomato, pepper, cucumber, tomatoes. And then 2 more pepper plants on the table there. So I should get a heck of a lot of peppers this year. These salad leaves in there. My peppers there. There's a few little tomatoes coming there. Be quite a while before they're big enough and ripen up if yet to eat though. That'll be the first cucumber that's ready to eat. They've still got a week or 2 to go yet, but it's grown quite quickly, that one. And I have 3 more tomato plants outside the greenhouse here, and I've also got 4 more out in the front garden. I suspect that I didn't water this plant enough for a few days, because there was a period where all of a sudden a lot of the little cucumbers that were growing sort of just died before coming to anything. There's 2 or 3 like that going up the plant, and this one that is growing is very stunted at the bottom there. So the only thing I can think is that I just didn't water it enough for a few days, and that's kind of affected it there. I've still got 1 growing there, even if it's not going to get much longer, it's still going to be edible. But the tomatoes are slowly ripening. We haven't had much sun. August was very grey and miserable here, so that's made it a bit more difficult to get the tomatoes to ripen, but they are gradually, especially the smaller ones. The larger ones are still very green, and we're now into September, so I'm hoping we're going to get enough sun to ripen those. And the little peppers that are growing. One of the pepper plants here had a lot of green fly on, and I've had to spray it at the top there, so I'm hoping that that hasn't killed it. But I have got quite a few other pepper plants growing that are doing better anyway. You can see here, there's a few peppers growing on that one. Got 1 pepper that's actually starting to turn red. It's kind of orange at the minute. Not that they're inedible when they're green anyway, but it's nice to have some of them at different stages. You know, some of them I can eat when they're green, some when they're orange and red. Now with my tomato plants, a lot of people like to keep them very neat and tidy. They cut them at a certain length when they get too tall, and keep them propped up straight. But I find that I get a lot more fruit if I just let them grow pretty wild. It's the leaves that I keep under control. I will cut the leaves back so that it stops the tomatoes from being sheltered from the sun. You don't want to shade them from the sun too much, so any leaves that seem as if they're kind of shading the fruit I cut off, but it also helps the air to circulate around the plants to stop kind of fungus and mould and that building up on them. But obviously you still then want to leave enough leaves that the plant is getting energy from the sun as well. But I find that that leads to the most fruit, even if it does get a bit messy in here. just the larger ones that still aren't really reddening at all. So hopefully we'll get a nice sunny September. That cucumber that seemed like its growth was a bit stunted has gradually started to fill out at the bottom there and get a little bit longer. Now I had two varieties of beans growing here, some broad beans and some sort of French beans. And the broad beans came about a month earlier than the French, so that means that they're kind of staggered, so I'm getting a few months worth of beans rather than just one crop of beans all at the same time. So it helps to have different varieties that are going to come at different times during the year to spread out your crop. I did the same thing with the tomatoes. I've got some small kind of cherry tomatoes which come and ripen earlier, and then these larger tomatoes tend to take longer to ripen, so they'll be ready to eat a few weeks, maybe even a month later than all the cherry ones. Unfortunately, I'm having a real problem with some bugs that keep laying their larvae on the leaves of my pepper plants. And one of the pepper plants I've had to actually take out of the greenhouse now because the fly was spreading so much onto the others. But I came out here a few hours ago, maybe 4 hours ago, and wiped all the larvae off of the leaves, and they've come back already. They're relentless. And you can see where they've kind of completely destroyed the top of this pepper plant, eating away at all of the stem, all the leaves, the flowers that were there. I've still got a couple of peppers growing on here, so hopefully they'll come to something. But a lot of the leaves became very floppy and weak, and I had to take them off. You can see these leaves here, they're all going weak and floppy and dying, where I guess those bugs are just sapping all the energy out of them. It's a shame, so I've got a little pepper there growing that I don't really want to die. And you see this is more of them on the back of that leaf there, and literally just a few hours ago I sort of squished them and rubbed them all off. I've got this stuff here to hopefully stop them from coming back now. This should be safe to use on edible plants. I don't really like spraying chemicals onto my plants, especially ones I'm going to be eating from, but those bugs are just so relentless, I've kind of had to. But it says that it's safe for flowering and edible plants, and it even says it's got strong some kind of plant food mixed into it as well. Yeah, added feed for strong growth, so hopefully it won't be too bad putting this on. The insect attack is yet another reason why I like to grow extra plants. It's better to have too many than too few, even if it does get a bit cluttered, because you never know if something's going to come along and kill one of the plants, or if some of them just won't grow initially as well, so I usually have lots of spares. You can see the leaves on this pepper plant have been eaten as well. There are a few holes in them. Not as badly as the one I took out, but still. Never had my pepper plants attacked like that before. Got more than I know what to do with. I'm growing a little stinger nettle patch, which apparently is quite good for insects, butterflies and that, but mainly because I actually like using these for tea now. I've actually got quite a taste for it. Chilled in the fridge, which is the same way I feel about green tea. I'm not so keen on it hot, but if it's been chilled in the fridge, I think it's really nice. And chilled iced nettle tea is really refreshing. Well, it's mid-October now, and I've still got quite a few tomatoes that haven't reddened up yet, so I'm going to try and kind of artificially redden them by taking some of these off and putting into a cardboard box wrapped in newspaper with an apple, because the apple apparently gives off kind of chemicals that help to ripen them up. They don't tend to taste as good when you do this. They're not as sweet as if they've ripened in the sun on the vine, but it's better than nothing. And you can still use green tomatoes anyway if you chop them up and put in chutneys or in a stir fry. But I'm going to try and ripen some of them up at least anyway, because there's quite a few nice ones here still. I've cut most of the leaves off the tomato plants now as well, because there isn't much sun. The leaves don't serve much purpose. So by cutting the leaves off, all the energy from the plants is going straight to the tomatoes now. Now I've got 4 different varieties of tomatoes growing. I've got these just regular old tomatoes. I've got these extra large ones that have kind of a point at the end. I've no idea what these different varieties are called. Sure someone out there must know. But yeah, these sort of very big tomatoes that have a little point at the end I've never actually seen before. I've no idea where I got those seeds from. I've got these little kind of cherry tomatoes. And then I've also got these other tomatoes that are about the same size, maybe slightly bigger than cherry tomatoes, but they're kind of longer. Now once again, I have no idea what those varieties are called, but they tend to be my favourites. But unfortunately, those ones aren't reddening up yet. And I'm not sure if it's because I grew them a few weeks later and that they will redden up in a few weeks, or if it's because of the location, because I've got those in the front garden, and for some reason the tomatoes just don't seem to ripen up as well in the front garden as they do in the back garden, which is strange because they get more sun in the front garden. But if I'd known which varieties were which, I would have tried to have got those small but long tomatoes in the greenhouse, because they are my favourites. It's a shame these ones didn't ripen up out in the sun, because these are my favourite variety. These kind of small but longish tomatoes, I don't know what they're called. But I only had 1 plant of those and they haven't ripened at all out in the front garden. So I've got them in here now with an apple. I'll check them every week and see if they progress or not. I've never actually tried this before, so it'll be interesting to see if it works. It's October 31st now, so it's getting pretty cold and dull outside. But you can see I've got a lot of tomatoes off still. This is pretty much it now though. The rest that are still in there are green, and I don't think they're going to redden up. Maybe if I try putting them in a box like I did those other ones. But this seems to be pretty much the end of the red tomatoes now, but still that's not too bad. Still getting some by the end of October. It's December now, so it's mostly just yucca plants and things I've got in here that won't survive outside for the winter. But I have still got a few peppers growing. So I'm not sure if they'll redden up any more in here or not. They are very slowly reddening. So I don't know whether to take the chance leaving them in here, where they might possibly catch the frost, or taking them in and putting them on the windowsill, because I've still got quite a few peppers growing really, so it seems a shame to waste them. And they just don't taste as good green. They tend to be a bit harder and not really have too much taste to them until they start going red. The tomatoes that I had in the cardboard box, the larger ones ripened, ones like these, but those sort of small long ones that tend to be my favourites didn't for some reason. So sadly, I was still able to use them because I was able to slice them up and put them into stir fries, but it's not the same. They don't taste as nice as when they're reddened up. It's kind of annoying because they are my favourite ones. But the larger ones and some of those just small little plum tomatoes reddened up, and the rest of these green ones here are what I took from the plants still in the greenhouse, because we're getting frosts now and just no point leaving them out there. Once again, some of them are starting to ripen up a bit. You can see there and there. So if I leave them on the windowsill, I'll get a few more red ones out of it, and the green ones I'll just chop up for stir fries. Well, it's the end of the season now, so all the crops have come to an end, and it's always kind of sad really when you get to this time of year where everything's dead, and I've got to wait till March now to get everything growing again. But I had pretty good crops this year. The onions and sprouts and that didn't come to anything, which I didn't really expect they would, because I don't tend to have much luck with them. Just haven't got the space to put them anywhere where they're going to get enough sun that's really appropriate for them. But all the stuff in the greenhouse did well. I had loads of peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, the raspberries did really well, beans as well. So yeah, it wasn't too bad a year. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll catch you again next spring.